Morning, guys. Andy Skinner. I help businesses focus on process improvement, eliminating waste, and making sure their businesses run efficiently. We support via training, consultancy, or project delivery, different combinations of support, really depending on the size of the business.
So the first question we found online about processes is, does anyone else feel like half the day disappears into admin before you've even started the real work? Is this a common problem for business owners?
Absolutely, mate. I'm going to sound like a boring old man to youngsters, but effectively document your process. And there are various ways in which you can do that. You can use AI to support with it if that's appropriate, or you can get old school and a good old post-it note on the wall. But ultimately, what that will do is enable you to identify where those pain points are and where a lot of the admin is, which could or almost certainly can be automated. As an example, I've done a recent project with Paddy and Scott's, a relatively large, obviously, business in Suffolk. We were looking at how many inquiries they receive via their website, some 500 plus a week. Okay, just to put that into context. What they're actually doing is processing all of those inquiries. So quite an administrative task to reply to those inquiries. By looking at the reason for the inquiries and source of inquiries, we were able to eliminate 75% of them. So they now actually work. They still process all of the inquiries, but they're processing genuine inquiries, not the junk or the spam inquiries. So it's well worth kind of taking that step back to look at
Wow.
why we're
Yeah.
getting it, why we're doing it. And very, very often you can automate the administration, but make sure you automate the right things. Don't automate for the sake of automation, because I have seen it where you could automate and create the problem bigger.
Sure. Can you tell us a bit more about automating for the sake of automating? Just before we jump into the next question, what does that look like? When a business owner does that?
It can be really catastrophic, if I'm honest, Tom. So businesses will look at, certainly tends to be the early stage businesses. They will look to have full singing, full dancing systems and processes in place from day one, where actually that's not essential. So, and I use myself as an example here. So I've been going 6 years now as a business, or nearly 6 years, well over 1,500 clients. The first year I implemented a CRM solution, and what I found was I had automated processes for maybe 5 or 6 clients, which was just absolutely unnecessary and was giving me more work making sure the automation has done the right thing rather than actually just getting on and dealing with the customer inquiry in the first place. So sometimes, it's about appropriate automation is what I would say, and it's not always essential. If you've got high volume, high transactional processes, absolutely automate it from day one, because that's a no-brainer. But many service-based businesses don't. And they'll automate a process that they end up then building workarounds into because that repetitiveness isn't there.
You mentioned service-based businesses then. We have got a question from a service-based business owner. They're asking what the biggest bottleneck slowing down service businesses is. So what's a common one of those?
This bottleneck that I see, and I would say this because I'm a process weirdo, is not having appropriate processes in place. From the point of inquiry through to delivery of said service, one of the biggest challenges I see regularly, and I feel this as well as a business owner, I'm not so much, is I'm going to call it the onboarding process. Okay. And because there are bits in that process, touch points in that process that as a business owner, you can control. Like, when do you contact the client? But the bits you can't control are response and speed times from the client. They're going to reply when they're happy to reply. However, if you can make your process as easy as possible for them to reply, you're likely to get a quicker response. So for example, often I'm creating contact forms or forms that actually ask all of the questions all at once. So it takes the client slightly longer to fill all of those questions in, but actually once you've got them once and done, and then the process moves forward quicker. The amount of businesses I see where they'll ask a question, won't necessarily get all the information from the client, and then, we forgot that, we need that, let's go back. And you create this kind of to in and fro in, backwards and forwards. Actually, that just elongates the process.
My business is a mess. I haven't done any accounting other than bank statements. I keep my client info in phone notes, and I'm going out of my mind trying to track everything.
Yeah, I see this daily. Absolutely, Daddy. I mentioned the Go Digital program that I support across Norfolk County Council. Hopefully it'll come into Suffolk soon as well. But yeah, I cannot emphasize enough, even if you're starting your business today, implement the appropriate accountancy software. And so there is accountancy software out there. If you choose the correct bank, that doesn't cost you anything to implement. So there really is no excuse, because it can be a free, if you like, or funded service. that will keep you, as I mentioned about having appropriate systems and tools and CRM, customer relationship management, in place from day one. If you put accountancy software in place, I'm a huge fan of Xero. I know I'm not the BBC, other accountancy software packages apply, whatever. But I'm a huge fan of Xero, and I've implemented that with several clients. That actually contains a contacts module. So you can actually keep all of your client records, any conversations or notes of your client electronically, and it's cloud-based, so you're not losing them. Oh, one of my first clients, I'm going to tell you the story because I find it quite amusing still. It was a hairdressing salon. Booking appointments in a paper calendar, book, diary. So why are you still doing it? Oh, we don't need a system. We're not big enough for that. We can't afford it. So I literally just picked the book up and just threw it. I said, what are you going to do now? And the owner's face, I mean, I didn't, it was a duplicate. I kind of, bit like, with the old Jeremy, you are too young to remember this, but the old Jeremy where you prank them. The business was dead straight away because I just literally thrown their entire schedule out the window. I said, that is why you need an electronic solution. And we implemented an electronic solution, which was 10 quid a month. There's really low cost solutions out there. So there really is. But the accountancy software, absolute no brainer. Get it in place from day one. It does more than simply sending invoices and bookkeeping. There's a lot of functionality in all four of the packages. I mean, the ones I would recommend looking at: Xero, Free Agents, QuickBooks, or Sage. Yeah, there's many more.
QuickBooks or Sage.
Yeah, okay. There's many more, but they're not supported. And these things connect to your bank account, so you want to be safe and secure. Generally, they don't cost more than 25, 30 quid a month. So to be brutally honest, if you can't afford 25, I'm going to be really harsh on people here. But if you can't afford 25, 30 quid a month for accounting software, you shouldn't have a business. Tough fact.
Yeah, good. Tough love.
It is. We often talk about it through the Start, Build, Grow program, which is startup businesses, but it is an essential tool, and you need to be prepared to. Free agents often people prefer, because if you bank with NatWest, it's a NatWest product, so there's no cost. So again, coming back to, there's not really an excuse, because if you haven't set a business bank account up yet and you're worried about the cost of accounting software, set it up with NatWest and you get it for free anyway.
There you go.
Good.
Amazing. So why do most small business owners struggle to delegate tasks to their team? Is it a trust issue or something else?
I think it's a combination of things. So for young business owners, often they've not worked anywhere else, or they don't have any other experience. Set the business up because it's a passion or something that they really enjoy doing. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're good at running a business. You see it time and time again, is that the owner of the business, and certainly small businesses, they're fantastic at what they do, whatever developing the product or providing the service, etc. But the actual day-to-day running of the business is not something they're good at and strong at. And for me, I wouldn't say so much it's about trust, but it's about having the right experience and the right people performing the right activities. And it sounds really probably slightly controversial. I don't mean it to be here. Often the owners of the business are not the right people to be running the business, but that is the reality of it. And as a result, because they haven't got that experience or that skill set for that particular role, that's where these challenges kick in my experience.
Yeah. Well, the famous sort of social media example is the Gymshark owner, isn't it? Where he set up Gymshark, but then was CEO, realized he wasn't the best at being CEO, and stepped down to do marketing and let someone else become CEO.
Yeah, before I left corporate world and set my business up, I was a bit of an anomaly in the sense, I remember a lot of I was a continuous improvement director for large financial services, and a lot of the leadership team would be, oh, you've got some, why are you having such and so person in your team? There was almost this fear from the leadership team that having good people in your team that were better than you was a weakness, or made it actually, for me, quite the opposite. I want the best people in the team possible, because it makes my life easier and better, and we can provide better service. And it's kind of similar concept. If you're starting a business, make sure you have the right people in the right skills in the right roles. And certainly family-based businesses, that's where it's toughest. Particularly, I see the son or daughter is now a director, and you kind of say, why are they a director? Because they're the son and daughter, is the honest answer. They don't necessarily have not always, but that's the reality of it. And it's easy to fall into that trap. But you can still skill them, and you can still give them experience in the right roles. It is one of the reasons I'm a massive and advocate and do an awful lot of work with Suffolk New College. I'm the chairman at Ipswich Wanderers Football Club, which is there's a reason for me saying that. I'm just chucking that in randomly. I've been doing the role 4 months, so I've coached for a long time, over 10 years. In the last 4 months, we've taken 5 placements from Suffolk New College. and we've actually created the project, and some of that, it's all volunteers that run the club, and they're looking at me like I've been smoking something at the weekend, like, why have we got all these students suddenly coming in? But what they don't realize is those projects are giving those students the experience. So, for example, social media as a project, and we've got someone that volunteers on social media, and the first response, and it was a he, oh, they can do this and they can do that, and I said, brilliant, stop. The point is they have to define that project from day one. It's not us telling them what we'd like them to do, what they can do, what they can't do. We have to create a safe environment for them, and they may absolutely, I'm nearly swore, so I didn't swear then, make a mess of it. So what? It's in a safe environment. That we kind of want them to. We want them to learn and make those mistakes in a safe environment. So then when they move out into big wide world, wherever that might be, they don't make those mistakes because they've learned from these placements. And I think it's really important. So you can give that experience and skills to younger people.
The most inefficient part of your business, what you're ignoring, we've all got at least one thing held together by duct tape and good intentions. So what's yours? So how does a young person identify what this is and then deal with it?
Yeah, I would link this back to an answer I said earlier, Harrison. Really, and again, I sound like a boring old man, but document your process. Whatever that may look, like I said, there's various ways of documenting that process. I would recommend something called a swim lane or cross deployment functional graduate. What that will do is enable you to identify the loops and areas of responsibility, which will make it visible as to where those pinch points are. And very often it will be teams working in silos, even though, even if you're a single business owner, kind of pretend that you're not, put these different hats on, and so finance, HR, servicing, marketing, whatever. Think about the functions of the business, not necessarily the fact that it's you doing everything, and break them down, and you'll quite quickly see visibly the loops where things are just going backwards and forwards, or unnecessary touch points, or the piece. Very often in early stage businesses, it's the connection between the areas. So for example, if you got an inquiry through and the inquiry came through the website, where does it go? Usually ends up in an email somewhere. Brilliant. What do you do with that email? Oh, I forgot about it. Yeah. And so on. What happens if it's a phone call? You don't get that email. And I make a note of it. I think we had it earlier. Make a note on, on a bit of paper. Brilliant. Well, how do you follow up? Actually, what should happen is all of those inquiries are funneled into a CRM solution.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
With appropriate automated steps.
Small e-com owners doing less than 500k a year. What's one thing that slows you down the most? So for you, what's one thing that you most frequently see, and how does someone prevent that?
The one thing I see, and I wouldn't necessarily say 500k, I would say slightly higher, bigger values as well, is they don't have an appropriate business plan. And by business plan, I'm not talking some of the stuff you get off Google and, you spend a 25-page Word document and you make a load of forecasts and fake numbers up, and to get a loan or a grant or something like that, they add no value whatsoever. But they don't have what I call a living, reviewed every 6 month operational business plan. So, for example, when this change happens, do this, do this. So we use a tool called the business canvas model frequently, because what that does, it gives the ability for people to look at real time in a pragmatic tool. And what it also does, it shifts the mindset. So rather than, to answer the question around slowing them down, when I have XYZ capital, pounds and pence in the bank, I will invest that and do the next bit. What it actually does is it flips the thought process and say, actually, okay, when I've got 50 clients, I need that. When I've got 100 clients or sales, that changes, I need that, which is then not stifled by that financial thought process, because usually there is always a way of finding the finance, whether that is a grant, whether that is loan, whether that is investment. But what you can't do is find the actual growth element. That happens in different ways. So that would be focus on that.
Okay, so is operational chaos just a normal part of your agency life? I guess even if you put the right processes in and the right automation, is operational chaos just a natural thing that will happen in business?
Having the right processes and the right systems and the right setup is obviously really important. But also as important is having the right people and the right culture. So, I've worked with some really fantastic businesses over the last sort of 6 years, and they've invested heavily in tech. But what they haven't invested as heavily in is people. So something as simple as some really effective solutions I've implemented with clients over the last, as I say, is a daily huddle, for example. So a team of sort of 25 people, broken into teams of 5, for argument's sake, a 5-minute discussion huddle around, I call it a PDQC board, people delivery quality board, with some measures on. Okay, don't want to overthink it. Everybody gets the same message consistently and is brought in. Yeah, and I've seen it as well, where we'll change your process, we'll implement a new process. Fantastic. If you don't tell anyone you're putting in a new process, and you don't train them, and the implementation isn't effective, this is where you're going to get your chaos, because you'll have 5 people still doing 5 different things. So I think, it's not all about technology and automation and workflow. That's obviously one part of it. Keep it informing, communicating people and getting the right culture, and allowing people to challenge some of those processes as well. And I know it's what I do as a day job is continuous improvement. And I often refer to a tool called the iceberg of ignorance. Don't know if you guys have heard of that, but effectively it talks about how the people that do the job, so I call them grassroots staff, I don't want to be offended anyone, but the people that do the job usually know of 100% of the problems or issues that exist within a business. The leaders will know or should know of about 3%. So who do you really want to be asking what's the best way to do something? Not the leaders or the owners, the people that are doing the job. But a lot of business owners, go back to the question you asked around trust earlier, don't empower, don't let people come up with those ideas because it's not their business and they know better, where very often they don't.
Yeah, sure. Great answer.
What would you say to someone that says, my small business is exploding and I need help? I'm looking for suggestions and tips.
I guess they mean growth, right? Just that,
without
huge growth.
Repeating the same answers, ask for the right kind of help. Very often I've seen businesses, and I've worked with a business, I'm in there as a process improvement consultant, for example, looking at how can we do things more efficiently. And they'll bring in a sales consultant or another business advisor. And suddenly you've got 3 people offering 3 different views with different a different perspective, which confuses the business owner. So what happens is they don't do anything because they're not sure which way to go, throw their head in the sand. That means that they've almost got a negative experience or negative perception of bringing in an external person to help and support. So they do nothing. And it just the chaos, as you called it, the operational chaos, just snowball effect, just becomes more and more and more and then they end up jerking and putting in a technical solution that may not be the right technical solution. And very often when I'm doing technical projects with even a CRM, for example, the business owner's often got a solution in mind. And I kind of stop them and say, brilliant, what do you actually need? And we'll list down what they need. And then we'll undertake a benchmarking exercise to look at 10, 12, maybe even more different alternatives against what the functionalities they need. And usually it's a very different solution. I think it's really valuable. I would say don't be afraid to ask for help, but ask for the right kind of help. And there are a lot of generic business advisors. Often the problem is not generic, it's quite specific. It's worth taking the time to find the right external support and help for the specific issues. And it might not always be, very often at the moment, you kind of got, there's also organizations like the New England Growth Hub and local authorities support. Some people are sometimes fearful to talk to them, but what they will do is point you to the right specialist support. They won't try and support you themselves because they don't necessarily have that. They're there as kind of, a signposting facility to point you to the right direction.
What are the best tools to help streamline operations for a small business?
So I've already mentioned accountancy software. Get that in place. Whatever you choose, the 4 I would look at, different order this time. Each QuickBooks, Xero and Free Agents. Don't need all, you need one of the appropriate. From I would look at a CRM solution, so customer relationship management tool. I am a huge fan of Monday.com. It's relatively low cost. Some people don't like it because it doesn't necessarily come templated. You have to build and configure. You don't have to code. It's like drag and drop and set it up. I'm a fan of that because you build what you want around your process rather than shoehorn your business into a pre-templated solution. So it's not particularly, some people don't feel of it convenient, but it's really effective. There are other tools there, so HubSpot. So these may be familiar names with some HubSpot, Soho, Salesforce. They can be quite expensive. There are also industry specific tools that, depending on, the nature of the business and the sector, there will be industry specific solutions. Often people think, well, that's going to cost me 80, 100 quid a month. Oof. If you then work out how much time that's saving and what the financial value of that time equivalent is, suddenly that cost becomes negligible. I would also look at, so not just, so you got the operational tool, if I call it that, and the finance tool. What other tools can potentially minimize and make your life easier. So tools such as Calendly. If you're a service-based business and you want people to book in consultations, use a tool like Calendly, which links to if you're undertaking your services virtually and you use Zoom or Teams, etc., make sure you look at the full functionality that's available in them. For example, Zoom is we're on now to decide something, but Zoom's particular the functionality in Zoom, maybe whiteboards, maybe AI transcript, maybe transcript notes. There's apps you can connect to Zoom as well for your account, and all of the others. I'm just using Zoom as an example that actually make your life easier. Most CRM tools you can and Calendly, you can schedule the meetings via the CRM. So suddenly it's stitching everything together as well at no additional cost other than the cost of setting it up, a bit of time.
As a small business owner, how much emphasis do you put on standard operating procedures?
So given it's kind of my day job, so you basically document your process is one thing. Your process should be embedded in a standard operating procedure. So the process is kind of the what, and the standard operating procedure is the how and the why in my brain. So I think they're essential. If you look at spoke about accountancy software quite a bit this morning. If you look at Xero as an example, okay, if you go onto Xero, you look at their help guides, they are basically standard operating procedures that you can follow, documented. So there are tools out there as well that do. So being a process improvement specialist, all businesses are kind of, I guess, facing the need to change as a result of AI in the last, particularly 12 months, but maybe longer. So the amount of times I'm asked, well, why don't need you? Because I can use AI to document my process. Brilliant. You can't argue with that. But what AI won't do is run the workshop for you and facilitate the discussions, which is where the real value is in that exercise. And I'd actually tell clients, brilliant, don't use me to document the process or document the standard operating procedures. Use AI to do that. Use me for the conversations and the facility and experience. And then use that. So there are tools out there. Scribe AI is a really good one, which will document your standard operating procedures as well. So they don't have to be, time-consuming exercises to do so. But what it will also enable you to do is review how you're doing things. So when you come to those pinch points or bottlenecks, you've got those documented. Hang on a minute, don't need to be doing that anymore, or that's changed, or we can make that more efficient.
Has anyone actually automated a real business problem and saved thousands in time? So do you have an example of something you've automated that saved a client thousands in time?
I can't give you the actual numbers of pounds and pence, because I'll get in trouble. But the Paddy and Scott example I used earlier. So if you think 500 inquiries a week minimum, I'm having to give you some kind of generic figures because confidentiality, etc. 95% of those inquiries no longer need someone looking at them. That's effectively a person's job saved. So within Paddy, they didn't make anyone redundant, by the way, just to be clear. They basically retrained and repurposed someone to do more. And actually, but as a really good example, what that's enabled them to do is they've now seen growth because they've had an additional resource focusing on more value-added activities rather than just an admin responsive role, which was adding no value. So that was a very simple automation that basically said, if the reason for inquiry is this or this, put that there. We don't need to touch it. So it wasn't just the person, the productivity, the cost saving there. What that enabled them to do is switch off functionality in the back end, which gave them license and tangible pounds and pence savings as well, of a significant figure, which I'm not allowed to share. But yes, you can imagine.
Yeah.
Can we do a one line where it's like, my name is Andy, and then where people can find you, sort of thing? So maybe where you work or your social handles, whatever you wanna say.
My name's Andy Skinner. You can get in contact with me via LinkedIn, Andy Skinner, or website amsbusinessconsultants.co.uk.
Perfect.
Amazing.
Andy, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for joining us.
We appreciate it.